moving from the lymphatic capillaries into the lymphatic collecting vessels. These lymphatic collecting vessels are going to be kind of similar to the actual veins of our cardiovascular system. In the same aspect, they both are pulling fluids back towards the heart. But there are some differences. The lymphatic collecting vessels have thinner walls. So there's not as much thickness around the walls, not as much structurality. And that structural component, that structurality, is basically helping with the actual collecting, keeping it opened. So the reason it's being held open, so it's held open because of the collagen fibers, remember. So the structural components, even though it's thinner walled, it's held open because of those collagen fibers. Secondly, the valves. While veins can't have valves, the collecting vessels will have even more valves. So more backflow prevention. And then you have this anastomose. Hopefully remember that term. That was that branching, splitting, giving alternate pathways. So you'll have plenty of these branching pathways, plenty of these anastomose in these collecting vessels, allowing for the fluid, the lymph, to simply flow back up to the heart with as little impedance as possible. Now, these can travel either superficially or deep. So if you have a collecting vessel from the lymphatic system that's traveling more superficially near the skin, it typically is paired off with a vein. So go back to cardiovascular veins, they're everywhere. So the superficial veins a lot of times can be paired with these collecting vessels. But if it's traveling deeper, so think about right in the middle of the arm, then they're usually paired off with the arteries. So it really depends on where these collecting vessels are found. Are they superficial to the skin, or are they deep inside of the arm or the trunk or wherever you're looking? So veins or arteries, but either way, these collecting vessels are typically paired with one of the two types of blood vessels. Now the nutrients for these collecting vessels, because they are living tissue, they still need nutrients. So they need gases, they still need carbohydrates, they need all these things to function. That's coming from the vasa vasorum. So think back to the cardiovascular system. We talked about vasa vasorum there as kind of branching supply of networks. That's what's giving the actual nutrients to these collecting vessels. Now the lymphatic trunks. So collecting vessels come together and they make larger vessels, which are called trunks. These lymphatic trunks, we have a paired lumbar system. So you can get an idea where that's lumbar. We then have a paired bronchomediastinal. Remember, mediastinum is the region up here, just superficial and superior to your heart a little bit. You have paired subclavian. I think subclavian was running through here. So paired subclavians. Paired jugulars. Remember, jugulars is in the neck. So the paired jugular trunks. But they only have one single intestinal trunk. So it's not paired, just one intestinal trunk in the middle. And that's it. So kind of look at these things and think about how they're functioning, what they're doing. They're all the bigger vessels now. They're going to start merging, coming together. These larger vessels, these trunks, are all going to come into these two singular ducts. So there's going to be a duct that's on the right and a duct that's on the left. First one up is the right lymphatic duct. That'll make sense, right side. The right lymphatic duct is going to drain all the lymph from the right side of your head, from your right arm, and a portion of your right side of your thorax. You know, there's a whole lot left. True. The right duct is the smaller of the two. So this right lymphatic duct drains less than its counterpart on the other side. The thoracic duct, which comes on the left-hand side, the thoracic duct is coming from this cisterna chyli. Now, the cisterna chyli is a main junction point down in the thorax, as well as coming and draining your left arm, your legs, and left side of the thorax. So both these, though, are going to empty into the venous return just above the heart here. Specifically, they're entering into the internal jugular and subclavian veins. So right where those two form a junction, that's where these ducts are emptying into. So they're going to bring all that lymph and drop it right into that major venous return just before it gets into the heart. So you can kind of see right here, we have the thoracic duct. That's the green right there, going right into where you have that internal jugular and subclavian veins. From there, it's a straight shot right back into the heart. Now, if you notice, this thoracic duct is covering the majority of the body here. So most of the lymph is coming through the thoracic duct. But then you also have the right lymphatic duct. And that one, again, goes right between the internal jugular and the subclavian vein. So the idea is they're both dumping the lymph in right just before you get back to the heart. So you're having all this increased fluid going back into the heart to be recirculated back throughout the body. So that's a little about how the flow of the lymph goes, from the smallest capillaries to those collecting vessels, into the trunks, and into then finally the two ducts.